the thing is that I'm not wedded to one form of doing things. I don't start by saying I'm a subtle writer and I'm only going to write subtle. Or, it depends. And I think, to me, on a muggy night in Mumbai, it's like all those characters, if they were to go outside their flat and live in that wedding which is happening down there, they would all be very, very repressed and they would have their masks on, right? So in their own little bubble, there's bound to be a backlash that they would really hit out. So I'd rather be truthful to the situation than think that, oh, maybe I'm too direct, maybe I should be subtle, or maybe, I shouldn't. That form of self-censorship is something that I don't think any creator, any artist would want to have those impositions, self-imposed. It need not be accepted by everyone, and that's really not the focus. So you may have a personal choice. You may feel, oh, this play is too direct, I would prefer something subtle. That, as a reader or as an audience, that's your prerogative.
Yeah, there's a question with 1, 2.
Just 1 second.
Finish. You had
No, sir, just
Give her the mic.
I asked to.
She had asked one more question.
No, I don't have one more question. I just you answered my. I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry. I'm very, very sorry.
Why are you sorry?
Sir, my first question was that is Dolly the central character?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I'm very, very sorry. My fault. I'm really sorry. Sorry. Okay. Now again, in London, Michael Walling, Engelbeek was in contact with him, co-directed a production with me in which Ba was the central character. Right? So in my script, Ba is, not only is she demented, she's paralyzed. So she's talking from her bed. Right?
That bell.
Yeah, and the only thing she can do is ring the bell. Right? Whereas in his production, when she goes back into memory, she actually begins to walk. It was like almost in the round he'd done, and he put sand around the periphery of the stage, and Ba would start walking and sifting through the sands of time, so to say, and she then automatically became the central character. She was the focus. The design was such that you immediately related everything from Ba's story, which I thought was a brilliant interpretation, because if you look at the cause and effect pattern, it begins with Ba's story and the violence that she faced and the kind of gender war that she waged with her husband, the power and gender, the class and gender war that she waged with her husband. And that seems to be the start of the story, like like in Mahabharata, it's the, Satyavati and Shantanu's story. So I thought that was a brilliant, and quite frankly, I didn't see it that way when I wrote it. And yes, I mean, some productions do have both of them as central characters. Yeah, Halka and Dolly, and some people say that Dolly, the play is really about Dolly, which actually I tend to disagree, but then who am I only wrote it.
Yeah.
There's someone else waiting, young lady. No, you, young gentleman. Go on.
Thank you.
Well, sir, you just corroborated what Samantak just said, that theatre is a collaborative effort. And suddenly my mind went back to those lines on the first page of Tara, while Chandan was emphasizing the modes of novel, poetry, and drama. And I felt that Tara is an consequence of the collaborative efforts of the micronation embedded in the family. Because the issues with which your play deals in a number of ways are indeed a process, a collaborative effort it has contributions, not only of the individual, but of various people. And the true effect will come out only in the medium of drama. Does my reading hold some ground, sir?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a great example which to sort of validate what I said about, he says that something about in poetry you can recollect emotions when one is half asleep, but in drama it's like, you know, touching a bare live wire. And I think, again, it's very interesting because in Tara, if we look at the story, it seems to be Tara's story. But then as a writer, he's trying to appropriate it and make it his own. So in that sense, he's doing, as a man and as a survivor, he's doing what society had done to Tara. Is not only society had appropriated Tara's life as such, and now he's appropriating her tragedy and making it his own. So there is an irony in that, which I've endeavored to bring out. Yeah.
Just one more thing, quite curious about it. While I was reading Where There's a Will, I felt that the conception of the character, of the absent character of Maharaj, does it have any proximity with the conception of Kanhaiya?
Oh God, well, these intelligent guys, where did you spring from? Yes, I think that's a brilliant, nobody has ever thought of this. But even before you completed your sentence, I said yes. Okay, because both of them are cooks, yes. Right? And there's this line in Where There's a Will, where, after her husband has died, she is crying to her sister and says, oh my God, Meena, you've got to help me. And she says, find me another Maharaj, like she isn't thinking of her dead husband, she's thinking of her Maharaj, and then you wonder why, and what's the connection. So, and yes, in Bravery for the Queen, that takes on a completely different story. And of course it's fantasy there as well, because I see this more as fantasy. I really don't see it as reality, but still real in the sense that this is a fantasy that women can possibly have. Yeah.
Thank you.
But who's to say? Who are you to say that it isn't?
Well, that's true. You're absolutely right. Who am I to say it isn't real? I guess in my stories they're not real. But it could be real. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because also the auto rickshaw driver who
exactly, that's his. And in his case, it's not a fantasy.
Right.
See, that's the irony that I was trying to bring out in Bravery for the Queen. That because he's a man, and no matter how unacceptable his sexuality is, he still has the resources to fulfill it. Whereas with the women,
Dolly or
even Alka for that matter, is that their sexuality is very much a part of mainstream life, but it's still very unacceptable.
Exactly.
So there's an irony over there.
Yeah. Yes.
Sir, did you ever guillotine the sharpness of your pen to be just politically correct?
Well, that's a good point, because that came about when that lady asked me a similar question. And that I have to, let me put it this way, I don't think I've censored myself, but at the same time I've become very conscious of what I write because of political correctness. That there is, and I see why the political correctness needs to exist, because the point of the political correctness and the malaise that I deal with are connected, right? Like if I'm talking about women and I'm talking about oppression, whether it's patriarchal or whether it's self-driven or whatever, right? That is the reason why political correctness exists, is to make sure that oppression doesn't live on a day-to-day basis, that we're not cracking sexist jokes, or we're not stereotyping women, or stereotyping homosexuals, or whatever, right? But the thing is, sometimes in the writing, something develops organically, which may be politically incorrect. Then you're at a dilemma. What do? Do you keep that and face the firing line when people say that how can you call yourself liberal-minded when you have said something so shallow? So that at that time, the question I asked myself is, would my character say this? Right? And I think that's more important than would I say this. Now, even if it is politically correct and it's me saying it and not the character, I'd rather have it if it's a character saying or doing it, because ultimately as a playwright you live through your characters.
Yeah, and what are you saying in any case? Because I think that's the other sort of great advantage that playwrights have over novelists or poets, in that you are not really saying anything, you're making characters say it. So in one sense you can't really be held responsible, whereas the novelist always has this option of guiding, even if it's just through an adjective. You don't have to be directly addressing the reader, even through the use of adjectives, through what you leave out and so on, that you guide your reader. Whereas for a playwright, you say, here it is. I mean, look at Shakespeare's full of politically
exactly. I mean, he's as sexist and classist as you can get.
But then when we say he is, we are making a mistake, because it's not he who is. It's the characters. It's Antonio, or it's what's his name, Petruchio in Taming of the Shrew, or any of the others. So to hold you responsible, let's say, for the sexism and the obvious classism of the two brothers in Bravely for the Queen is wrong.
Yeah, that's right, because it's not my voice that's speaking out. What I'm doing is that look at these characters and see how you respond to them. Now, in Bravely for the Queen, the story clearly belongs to the women, right? Now, the men, both of them, or all three of them, even Sridhar, whom we think is this decent, lovable guy, he has his kinks, like he, ultimately the power, when he wants to be one up over his boss, he uses the woman, so in that sense, that's who those characters are. But as a storyteller, I feel that I have given both perspectives, right? And I think I trust the audience to invest their empathy and feelings with what the women are going through. That is something which the audience also then has to.
And we have time. He's not running away. We've locked the doors. Even if he wants to leave, he cannot. There's water.
Sir, my question is to you, the eminent professor. আমি একটু বাংলায় জিনিসটা একটু পরিষ্কার করে বলতে চাইছি। আপনি প্রথমে যেটা একদম প্রথম দিকে যে নাটকের কথা বলেছিলেন, আবির্ভাবের কথা বলেছিলেন, সাহিত্য একাডেমি যেটা পরবর্তীকালে বোধহয় পায়নি বা পেয়েছে, এই কথাটা আপনি উল্লেখ করেছিলেন একদম প্রথম দিকে, আপনার বক্তব্যের প্রথম দিকে। তা সেই প্রসঙ্গে যেটা যদি মনে করি আমরা, শ্রী অরবিন্দের যেটা যে পারসিউস দ্য ডেলিভার, অথবা মধুসূদন দত্তের যে নীলদর্পণের যে রিট্রান্সলেশন বা রিক্রিয়েশন, সেইটা এটার উপরে আপনার অবজারভেশনটা চাইছি। আর একটা কয়েকটা
ইংরেজিতে নাটকও লিখেছিলেন,
অন্য অন্য কতগুলো প্রসঙ্গ আমার জানা রয়েছে আপনার কাছে স্যার। সেটা হচ্ছে যে যেটা রাজারাও যেটা স্থলপুরানো যে প্রসঙ্গটা ম্যানিফেস্টো হিসাবে পরবর্তীকালে আমরা ইন্দো অ্যাংলিয়ান লিটারেচার হিসাবে দেখতে পেলাম, তার থেকে আমরা গ্র্যাজুয়াল একটা ডিস্টেন্সিং দেখতে পাচ্ছি না যে মডার্ন ইন্ডিয়ান রাইটার্স ইংলিশের মধ্যে। এই একটা অবজারভেশন আপনার কাছে চাইছি। আর একটা কথা হচ্ছে যে এমিনেন্ট ড্রামাটিস্ট আমাদের সামনেই রয়েছেন, ওনার প্রসঙ্গে আপনার কাছ থেকে আমি অবজারভেশন চাইছি যে এটা প্রথম যে ছেলেটি যে প্রশ্ন করেছিল, সে প্রশ্নটা আমার মধ্যেও জেগেছিল যে লোকালিটি কি এতই বেশি প্রাসঙ্গিক যে গ্লোবালাইজেশন বা গ্লোবাল হওয়ার জন্য যে প্রচন্ড পরিমাণে ভোকাল হবে, সেটা কি স্থলপুরানো বা ইত্যাদি ইঙ্গিত কিছু বহন করছে, এক নম্বর। আর একটা হচ্ছে যে স্যারের যে নাটক যেগুলোর কথা আপনি অসম্ভব অসাধারণভাবে ব্যাখ্যা করলেন বিভিন্নভাবে, তা সেখানে আমার অন্যভাবে নেবেন না, এটা আমল প্রেজেন্টেশন, যে এটাকে যদি আমরা এরকমভাবে যদি ব্যাখ্যা করি যে ইউরোপিয়ান ডেলিকেসি ইন ইন্ডিয়ান ডিশ, তো এই প্রসঙ্গে আপনার অবজারভেশনটা কি স্যার? থ্যাংক ইউ স্যার।
থ্যাংক ইউ। না প্রথমতই আমি বলি যে আমার অবজারভেশন গুলো
ট্রান্সলেট দ্য হোল থিং।
না ওনাকে বলি যে এখানে আমার অবজারভেশন কি সেটা অন্য কারণ
কাইন্ড একটু ইন্টারাপ্ট করছি যে বিভিন্ন ইয়ে থেকে আমরা যেটা সমালোচনার মধ্যে পাই যে টেনেসি উইলিয়ামসের একটা প্রসঙ্গ ড্রামাটিস্ট মহেশ দত্তানি সম্পর্কে উল্লেখ পাওয়া যায়। এই বিষয়ে যদি আপনার অবজারভেশনটা একটু কাইন্ডলি বলেন।
না সেটা হচ্ছে যে আমার কি বলার সেটা এটা আপনার মহেশ দত্তানি কি শুনতেছে। ওকে, দ্য জেন্টলম্যানস কোয়েশ্চেনস which were fairly complex. One of the things he talks about is the transition from Indo-Anglian literature to modern Indian writing in English, and what I have to say about it. So yeah, and the other thing is it goes back to the question of local and global. So unfortunately all his questions were addressed to me, so I just said no. I've said that this is your party.
No,
you know?
no.
Not mine. And he spoke about the earliest. না যেটা আমাদের মহারাজ প্রথমেই বলেছিলেন, he said that Indians have been writing plays in English for a very very long time. 1831, in fact. Tanvi gave the exact date and name and so on and so forth. But I think Mahesh's importance lies in the fact that he is the first Indian author who's writing serious plays in English and being performed across the country. He's also been translated into a lot of Indian languages. Like I know that Final Solutions was translated into Hindi and had a hugely successful run in Delhi. It's unfortunate that perhaps because of our own Bengali snobbery and sense of superiority that we haven't translated Dattani. I also think it has been a failure on the part of departments like this and mine that we haven't taken up little projects to translate his plays. I mean, this is one thing that can be done fairly easily, because Dattani is easier to translate than, let's say, El Kunjra, in my opinion. Because the rhythms of the language that he uses are of an Indian English, which is, you see, when we did this little exercise in translating a section of Final Solutions, it was very easy. We did it in just about a day. We sat and we discussed it and we put the right words into the mouths of the characters and substituted it. It's easier to translate into Bangla than obviously to translate someone, like, I don't know, Anthony Schaffer or, who's this guy who died recently, the Nobel Prize winner, the Harold Pinter. It's much easier to translate, not only because of the context, but because of the cadences of the speech that he uses. In fact, he's been accused of being too Indian in his English, too Gujarati. In which one of the plays was this review which said that, I don't know whether she was speaking English or Gujarati.
I think it was Bravely for the Queen.
It was probably Bravely for the Queen. Ba was supposed to be speaking in Gujarati. Well, obviously she's speaking in English. So, I think it has been a failure on our part that here is this truly great playwright, and one hopes he will go on to greater heights. We haven't bothered to read him in Bangla. We haven't turned him into our own, because I think most of us here, when we do our creative writing or when we do our acting, we would tend to do it in Bangla, right? How many of us write in English? I mean, write creative stuff in English. I mean, departments of English throughout the country are filled with this. Those who are doing their academic reading and writing in English and yet doing their own creative writing in their mother tongues. Some now, I think, emerging in English, but still to a considerable extent in Bengal, because we've got this rich theatrical tradition, because we have a hugely active amateur theatre. How many of you do amateur drama? See? So there's another person who asked a question here who's fallen asleep in the nice kurta, who's also in fact, he didn't raise his hand.
I think 30 Days in September has a Bengali commercial.
Does it have
I think it is with some professional
okay.
from some district headquarters down in Calcutta.
Well,
maybe Mahesh knows about it.
Because I searched around, and in Boimela, I asked people, Mahesh Dattani natok Bangla paoja jay kina, and everybody said, no.
There is no printed.
There is no printed text. Yes, I was right. There is no printed text. See, because you make these claims and then someone proves you're wrong. Yeah. Next question.
Thank you, Professor Das. Hello, sir. A little while ago, you were talking about masks, personal masks and other sorts of masks. There is this essay by Shibadur Shankar called Theatre in Mukhosh, or Masks in Theatre,
Which has also been translated into English and is available in his book, The Third Theatre.
Yes. There he speaks about audiences and actors as well who don't have to put up masks when they are performing in traditional or popular folk forms of theatres or films like Nautanki or Ramlila, such kind of things. My question is, do you think as a playwright, as someone who observes our contemporary writings in India, are we able to produce new forms or new plays or new films in our times where we don't have to put up such masks, or do we have to look up to the forms from the past where we don't use masks?
Well, again, depends on what you mean by putting on a mask. Right? One is the theatrical mask, which is a face in front of your face, which would have a dominant emotion, or it could be neutral. The other is the mask of the style. Supposing you're doing Nautanki, that would have its own mask. Even if you're not wearing a mask, it would be a particular style, a particular way of behavior, of speaking, the gestures, everything. That I would say I would include that also as a mask. And I think realism is also a mask in the theatre. That what we consider today to be realistic is actually realism as another mask that is employed in the theatre, because there's no such thing. If you look at realism in the theatre, what is real is the stage and the actors and the makeup and the lights and the audience. That is real, right? So unless you stay with that reality, which would be futile, because theatre is about imagination, and masks are one way of facilitating that process of imagining, of transporting together with the performance, the audience and the performers go to some other time and space through that. So again, I don't know about new and old. I think I would quote, I've forgotten, some famous writer said this, and it's true about many things in life. He said that if you want new ideas, look at old stories. And if you want old ideas, look at new stories. So, the old and new are contained in one another. And what we sometimes think is new is actually as old as the hills. And if you look back on some classical texts, like if you look at, the Vedas or the Bhagavad Gita or something that is said there would be so relevant to our times, you'll wonder, how could it have been written thousands of years ago? So in that sense, it's about reinventing, and, it's basically, you're serving your time. There's no new or old. It's all there in existence. A famous quote that is up there is that, religion is actually acknowledging the divine that's already there in the self. And I would say that, art is actually acknowledging the truth that is already within you.
Thank you very much.
You are mentioning religion. Just triggered a question in my mind, and I'm going to use my privilege to ask it. Are you a believer?
Believer in what?
God.
It's such a complicated, because I always thought of myself as agnostic, in the sense that I don't really know. I do. Now, the thing is that if I
I'll tell you why I'm asking you the question. at one level, I'm not really sort of trying to ask you a sort of maybe embarrassing personal question, but the reason why I ask is, in many of your plays, I have had the sense that the characters are not just believers, but with the play itself, you get a sense of a certain immanence. That there's something greater, more beautiful, nicer, beyond.
Right. I do believe that there is something beyond. In that sense, I do believe, yes. And I think if you look at the closure of Dance Like a Man, it's a different plane of existence, right? And I am using, very typical symbols of myth.
Even Morning Raga is about finding the transcendence, which takes you beyond.
I think, to answer your question, I think I believe in transcendence. That if you're looking for the truth, it exists beyond. In that sense, I do believe in the illusion of the world and the illusory nature of the world. That is why it's so transitory, that it's changing from moment to moment.
And yet you do believe in things like goodness and justice and the need to be kind to your fellow human beings. So,
yeah, I'm not so sure whether I feel that you need to be, but I think that's an expression of yourself. That when you are truly realized, maybe not self-realized in the spiritual sense, that you will, the default is love and compassion.
Right.
That is the order of things. That destruction and hatred are against the order of nature in that sense.
Sorry, yeah.
In your plays, you always seem to bring out and raise issues which people don't really talk about. My question is, what do you think of these characters? Like, how do you see them? Like, Jiten is a guy, in his life women come and go without talking of Michelangelo. And
none of the people who come and go in his life do not even know who Michelangelo is.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And Nathan's homosexuality, how do you see them, these things, and where do you get your motivation from, like, to portray these characters?
Do I know such people? Is that the question?
She was being diplomatic.
How sweet. I love these questions and how they come in different forms. Well, do I know such people? That's a good question. Well, I think everyone knows such people. Yeah. And I think in that sense, when you create a character, I think the character resonates something, right? I'm not so sure whether you could take everything that the character does and say that this could be everything that a real person is, because that would seriously limit your creativity. Right? But Nitin is a whole load of things. Jiten is a whole load of things. He was also a son, an obedient son, and so was Nitin, right? And they did these things which brought about their destruction in some way or another. Jiten's violence brought about his destruction because he, destroyed his own daughter.
Also, a character like Praful, I find him almost a neurotic character. Like he's very peculiar kind of.
Do we know manipulative people who would think of ways to get their sisters married off?
Their boyfriends.
To their boyfriends? Well, he's not her boyfriend in the play, but it could be a boyfriend. Oh, you mean Praful?
Yeah, that's sisters married off to his boyfriend.
No, but then that's the thing. See, I may not know a character who would seduce a man and in order to blackmail him so that he will then marry his sister. I do not know such person. But I do know people who would go to extra limits to make such a marriage of convenience happen, right? So what drama is doing is it's mirroring the absurdities that exist in society, right? So you see that when you see it taken to such an extreme level, that's when you can reflect and say, this resonates, this, my God, people might do something like that.
Thank you, sir.
Can I take off from there and ask you another question, particularly in the context of the, within quotes, banning of the final solutions? You know, you're not allowed to stage it because of Babri Masjid and so on. So, do you think, as such a keen observer of Indian life and society, that we are becoming a more intolerant, I won't say nation, but certainly a more intolerant kind of middle class?
I think all middle class all over the world are intolerant in some way or another, because middle class values believe on certain assumptions, and you will be intolerant of anything that challenges those assumptions.
I'm asking, are we becoming more intolerant? Are we becoming
more intolerant? I think the more we are confronted with, the more intolerant we will be. That the intolerance is inherent, but it requires a stimulus. And because our world is more interactive today, that we have access, that information is coming to us, different forms of reality hitting us on the face. So the boat is being rocked. And so we notice the intolerance more. I think we're noticing the intolerance more and more.
There was a question here.
So the initial title of Seven Steps on the Fire was Seven Circles on the Fire. Why is this change?
Oh God, this is so embarrassing, I can't tell you. Is that I wrote Seven Circles Around the Fire thinking of the Sadhera that North Indian weddings do. And then afterwards, a friend pointed out that these characters are Kannadiga, the South Indian, right? And in South India, it's 7 steps, not 7 circles. So it's very embarrassing.
Second time around, I want to give first timers a chance. Anyone else who hasn't already asked a question or comment? If no, then we will allow you. Yeah. And then the young lady behind you who's already asked two
Sir,
questions.
my question is addressed more to you.
Can you?
Yes. Yeah, actually, just now you asked Sir a question that whether we are becoming more intolerant. I would like to talk about one particular play which has raised a highly controversial issue in the present time. Monish Mitro's play, শেক্সপিয়ারের ট্র্যাজিক হিরো, যেটাতে দেখানো হয়েছিল, এবং সেটাতে আমাদের মিডল ক্লাস যে সমস্ত দর্শকদের কথা আপনি বললেন, তারাই কিন্তু ওনাকে ফিডব্যাকটা দিয়েছিল যে না, আমরা এটা আবার দেখতে চাই। এবং আই থিঙ্ক ওখানে ইন্টলারেন্সের যথেষ্ট কারণ ছিল, কিন্তু যদি মিডল ক্লাস ভ্যালুজের কথা বলেন, কিন্তু সেখানে প্রোটেস্টটা করেছেন কৌশিক সেনের মতো মানুষরা, যারা আবার মিডল ক্লাসের মধ্যে পড়ে না।
কৌশিক ভেরি মিডল ক্লাস, ভীষণই মিডল ক্লাস।
না মানে মিডল ক্লাস বলতে আপনি যেটা যে মানে জাস্ট মানে ওই মেপে মেপে কাজকর্ম।
No, I mean, my intention behind asking Mahesh about middle class intolerance was really more political, because if you see the rhetoric, if you see the response to 377 or the Supreme Court decision on 377, the most powerful supporters are actually a certain kind of middle class. In one of his essays or interviews, or maybe prefaces that he writes, I forget, but this is something that Mahesh has written. He speaks of the English medium educated liberal urban Indian who believes in caste, and that is so true. I mean, you know, we equate English medium education with a certain kind of agnostic liberalism, if you like. You just look around you, the number of people who are wearing these stones for good luck and fortune. I don't know whether you're wearing it or you know, hidden. I'm not saying. See, at one point I used to find these things very strange, and then I would tell people when I was younger and even more stupid than I am, how can you do this? Now I see it as part of the very complex selves that we have succeeded in creating. I don't know whether you've seen this ad for IBM, I think, or Intel, which shows a slightly portly, very typically Indian-looking man who's walking and who's a great designer. He's wearing one of these stones for good luck. And to me, that in a sense sums up the upwardly mobile, modern Indian. Because on the one hand, you have these values, you believe in science and technology, and you think that homeopathy is a hoax, and you think that Ayurveda is all shit and crap. And then on the other hand, you have a guru, you've probably taken Dikha, you pray to Ma Saraswati, no, so I think that one of the things that Mahesh's plays have done is he's brought these characters center stage. He's shown us these contradictory selves. They're not simple characters. So when I asked him the question about growing intolerance, I'm really talking about the way in which, the BJP, for example, is cashing in, and they've already made a statement that if we come to power, we are going to make sure that 377 remains on the books forever and ever because homosexuality is against the order of nature. And there's a small minority of people like us who are on Facebook and so on and so forth who are protesting this. But by and large, the quote-unquote man, woman on the street, which is invariably the middle-class man or woman who is articulate, who is interviewed for Anandavaya Potrika or whatever, they're happy with these things. They're happy when somebody like Taslima, who's seen as a bad woman, is he gets her comeuppance. So it just sometimes seems to me that there's this tiny strand of liberalism or radicalism, mostly on Facebook and other social media. But by and large, as the middle class is becoming wealthier, as they are acquiring more material things, they are also becoming more intolerant of the Muslim, more intolerant of the homosexual, alternative sexuality, more intolerant of that kind of Naunota that was there. This is actually a very bad play by this chap called Monish Mitro, which more than anything else has these big poster advertisements, some of which are still around, which says Shakespeare's tragic heroes. And one of the pictures showed the back of a fully unclothed woman, which is supposed to be one of the scenes.
Sorry, it was a man.
Was it a man? Okay, a man. Sorry.
The actor who was playing the role of the actor.
Is that person a foreigner or a Bengali?
No, Bengali.
But wasn't there an article which said that a naked woman was also to appear?
No, sir.
There was no.
Draupadi,
Okay. So there was not frontal nudity, but and there was this big hue and cry, and it was stopped.
আপনি কি এটা বলছেন যে মিডল ক্লাস, আপনার কথার বেসিসে একটা বলি, সেটা হচ্ছে মিডল ক্লাস লোকেদের ক্ষেত্রে এই যে র্যাডিক্যালিজম বা প্রতিবাদ করা, এটা কি কিছুটা আবার ফ্যাশনেবল ব্যাপার হয়ে যাচ্ছে না? ওই দেখিয়েছে বলে দেখতে যাবো, বা হোমোসেক্সুয়ালিটি ব্যাপারটা কি, হোমোসেক্সুয়ালদেরকে তো একটা অদ্ভুত ভাবে দেখানো হয়। যেমন ঋতুপর্ণকে আমরা এনক্যাশ করেছি একটা সময়, মিট করেছে।
That I have this sense. I don't know. I was asking Mahesh whether he agreed with it. Ritu incidentally was a friend of mine, and much of what he did was just for show. I mean, he just wanted to piss people up. This is Ritu Ghosh. You must have known him. We were in college together, and he was a friend, and so on and so forth. I was often asking him, "Ritu, tumi eta kero koro?" So there was this thing, epatel bourgeois. That kind of thing has shocked the bourgeoisie. But what we don't know is how extremely hardworking a man he was, how incredibly well read he was. I could take Ritu into any department of Bengali in West Bengal, to the master's classrooms or the PhD classrooms, and Ritu would have read more Rabindranath and knew more about Tagore and Bangla Sahitya than any of them. I could take him into a department of English and he knew more about large aspects of English literature, more about Shakespeare than many teachers of English. So here's this tremendously hardworking, incredibly talented guy, and this business of his sexuality, the fact that he had thought of himself as a man, as a woman trapped in a man's body for a very long time. So that wasn't something very new for Ritu. And mind you, I used to call him Ritu even before this business happened, from the 80s. So. Yeah, so Ritu Polnas was not a fashionable radicalism. He genuinely believed in it. The sad part is that certain individuals are getting a kind of cheap thrill or popularity of making fun of Ritu Parna. And I think his significance in contemporary Bengali culture is that he forced us to confront a lot of things which we hadn't confronted before. And it's a great pity that he died when he did, because he was actually becoming more and more radical in certain ways as he was becoming more and more conservative. Like, for example, his response to Rabindranath. If you'd asked him 15 years ago what he thought of Rabindranath, now he was rereading Tagore, he was rediscovering the greatness. You know what Mahesh was saying about, you know, the great wisdom being there in old texts and so on and so forth. So yes, I think in Ritu Parna's case, I admire him, I love him, I admire him greatly, even though he's no longer with us. I just find the Bengali middle class response to him and the fact that we were more concerned with whether he addressed people as Tui than with what he was saying.
Absolutely. Yes, that's absolutely.
You know, that's the thing. I mean, if you ever heard Ritu and me talking, I used to speak to him like I speak to Tanvi, who's, you know, again a friend, you know. And Tui kore kotha, Tanvir name boltam, Tui kore kotha Ritu name boltam. It was a very normal kind of use of the phrase. People picked on the fact that you meet someone for the first time and use the tu form, and they missed out on what he was trying to tell us, which I think is a pity. That fortunately hasn't happened to Mahesh.
Sir, I am enjoying the privilege of questioning you people, but I would like to ask one last question to you. Sir.
Yes.
No, to you. Sir, in your play, Bravely for the Queen, when we were students, I particularly used to wonder about one thing, that in the play there are many characters who are not present actually upon the stage, but they have a lot of influence upon the play's entire action. I mean, what's the significance of this?
Well, I just felt that Praful's influence in the lives of all those characters on the stage was immense, right? So to me, I think the character that lives in our imagination of Praful is through the perceptions of the characters on stage, right? Who he really was, we don't know. And I think it would have been very, we can assume who he was, but we don't really know. I think bringing him on stage would have diluted that. I think it would be nice for a lot of people. He was this selfish, manipulative guy, whereas I see him as completely, driven by a desperate need of respectability to show that, their mother was not a mistress, that he had to marry off his sisters to a respectable household, and he was as much a victim of society as the others. Right, so I guess I did feel the need to put him on stage and dilute that.
And the other absent character, of course, is Chicken and Nitin's father.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and Daksha.
Yeah, the third, three characters. Yeah.
The beggar. The beggar. Yeah.
The auto rickshaw wala.
The auto rickshaw wala. And Kanhaiya, who doesn't exist for us and doesn't exist for the characters.
So, sir, actually, are you using a completely different kind of language for theatre, in which not only the characters who are present upon the stage are important, but also those who are absent are equally?
I'm not so sure whether it's that different. I mean, other playwrights have done that. I mean, Waiting for Godot, we never see Godot. That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Govindayan and his party, which doesn't have nothing appearing until the last scene.
That is Elkunchwar's.
Ibsen also does this with A Doll's House and Ghosts.
Ghosts, yes.
Ghosts, characters influencing the course of
right, absolutely. So there are lots of playwrights who've done that.
So are they some kind of influence upon you?
I knew that question was coming. No, I don't think, not in this case they weren't.
Before I'm not going to allow any further questions, but I think one thing now, I'm a very cruel and hard-hearted man. But one thing which I think all of us would enjoy is to have Mahesh read out a little bit
from your own text?
Yeah. Okay. This is a play called Where Did I Leave My Padda, which Indradeep has seen. I don't think anyone else has seen it as yet. Okay, this is scene 4. Now this play is about this 80-year-old stage actress who has walked out of a